Hello, everyone. Welcome to another special live edition of the Timmy Did What podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Kara Burrell. For this special episode today, we are diving into some breaking news because this might be the biggest political scandal in Utah in decades, and somehow nobody is talking about just how deep this actually goes. So that is what we are here for. Because what if I told you that the man that was elected to be Utah's top law enforcement official spent more time working with a nonprofit under criminal investigation than actually doing his job? That he funneled nearly $1 million into an organization now accused of fraud, deception, and a whole lot of other things that are worse than that we dedicate a whole podcast to. That this Utah Attorney General hid his travel records, his secret meetings. He redacted government documents just to cover up what he was actually doing behind closed doors. And the nonprofit, the one that was, founded by the man accused of sexual misconduct, deception, coercion, the Tim Ballard guy, Sean Reyes, just a few years ago, standing on a stage using his official title to endorse a man who, as we know, was, been alleged of luring women into these undercover operations, usually using sexual manipulation and all kinds of sexual abuse tactics. The man is Tim Ballard, and Sean Reyes is really at the center of it. So diving into this audit today is just a small window into even more corruption into the Mormon Church, how it works with nonprofits, how it works with the conservative right-wing parties that create the kind of theocracy in Utah that we've come to know and love. Because Sean Reyes wasn't just a supporter of OUR, he was actively helping them stay untouchable. So let's dive into this audit today, and welcome to the podcast, my wonderful co-host that we could not live without, but we almost did because he was in an accident, and we're not going to talk about his cyborg eye. Welcome to the podcast, Ryan Fisher.
Hi. Yeah. Glad to be here.
Ryan can't read so well, but we saw this new article came out. We've been waiting for it, and we couldn't wait any longer. So we're jumping on a live stream right now. So we'll hit you with some information right when I get done with this intro. All right, enough of that. Okay, welcome everybody into the live stream. And Ryan, you were actually there during this kind of committee hearing. What was it, yesterday?
Well, this is a report that was commissioned a year ago to investigate the dealings of Sean Reyes and see if there was any conflict of interest or any unethical, immoral practices by the Attorney General during his tenure as Attorney General. And finally, the report was issued and presented to the Utah State Legislature, the Oversight Committee, in this hearing or in this committee meeting yesterday. And so I went along with Celeste Boris, Mike Boris, and Kira Lynch to see what they found. And no surprise, they confirmed a lot of the things that have been accused to Sean Reyes and the really unethical, corrupt, I think that's a fair word to say, the corrupt practices in his association with OUR and Tim Ballard. And so this report, this audit was a team of investigators put together and presented to the Utah State Oversight Committee. And I was able to be in there for that meeting and hear all of the details on what that entailed and all of the reactions from the Utah State Legislature and what they are going to do and what they aren't going to do about it, which we'll get into as we go through what they found.
So in layman's terms, you were there to see Sean Reyes finally have all of his lies and corruption connected with Tim Ballard finally catching up with him because somebody in the state of Utah has finally connected with somebody else in the state of Utah and said, hold on, Attorney General's office, hold on, I have some oversight into your spending and where you've been using your time, not for the people of Utah, but for something much more nefarious, like for your pocketbooks and possibly for your cocaine addiction. But that's neither here nor there. That's a different story for a different time. Is that what you're trying to say, Ryan?
Yeah, this is there's been a lot of allegations made, rumors like the cocaine use and things like that. And so this was a very important investigation, not a criminal investigation. The audit committee was tasked with finding out what Sean Reyes was up to during his tenure, his association specifically with OUR and Tim Ballard, what that relationship looked like, what came out of that relationship, and if there was corruption involved or any sort of unethical practices, what recommendations does this audit, does the legislature need to do, the rules that need to be changed so that corruption doesn't happen?
I have some recommendations.
We'll get into, some of that as we go through what they found.
Right.
But I also like in that picture, Mike Boris and Celeste Boris and Kira Lynch, two of the women, half a dozen women that accused him of sexual misconduct. They were there on the front row, staring these people in the face. In this picture, you see that there is the new AG, Derek Brown, is then answering questions and from the committee. And these women, they're front and center. They're here for this. They're not going anywhere. They've been through absolute total smear campaigns. In fact, a new lawsuit was just filed 2 days ago by Pedro, who was, I think, featured as Simba in the Sound of Freedom movie, accusing Celeste of intimidation and accusing her lawyers of trying to coerce him to turn against Tim. Another frivolous lawsuit piled on the pile of lawsuits that Tim is throwing at these women. They showed up. They were there. Their faces and their persona is there, staring on the front row, staring these legislatures in the face. They're not going anywhere. And so I snapped that picture because that's what this is about. The women that were victims of Tim Ballard became victims in large part because Tim had criminal immunity granted to him, as he perceived, with his association with Sean Reyes. And so, with many people have said it, without Sean Reyes' support of OUR, there would not be any OUR. And without Sean Reyes in Tim's pocket, how would that have affected the alleged criminal activity, the alleged sexual assaults that Tim has been accused of, as well as the fraud that he's been accused of through the Davis County investigation? And what role did Sean Reyes play in silencing witnesses, silencing or intimidating whistleblowers, and or influencing any of these investigations? Those are the questions that are on the table. And so this is an audit that hopefully I was hopeful would answer some of those questions. And the findings are pretty deeply disturbing, unfortunately, but not surprising.
I wish they weren't so surprising because of what we already know so far that's come out over the last year about Sean Reyes and his connections with Tim Ballard, going all the way back into a lot of the founding of OUR. And he's gone on trips with him to go do badass stuff and take photos of it. And that's where a lot of the questions started of like, what you doing there, Attorney General, who's supposed to be looking into the corruption? That's your main job. This is the third Attorney General that has had to leave office because of controversy, breaking the law. The first two got arrested, and Sean Reyes, it's like he knew exactly how to play the game of just being a very corrupt, type of politician in the state of Utah, as if that's just the waters we swim in for some reason in this Mormon-founded state. So you've got the stools of OUR and Tim Ballard being able to carry out this type of harm and sexual abuse and coercion and all of the terrible things that we know that he's been alleged to have done to these victims here. The stools of which being the Attorney General of Utah backing him, and of course people like M. Russell Ballard from the Mormon Church. And with those two main pillars, he's able to be emboldened to do all kinds of corruption without thinking that it's ever going to come back to them. And that's why we do this podcast and make sure that the power is to the people. And you guys know exactly what's going on and how flimsy these institutions are and how much we need to hold them accountable so we don't have these types of things coming up again and people getting hurt. All right. So with that, are we ready to jump into?
Yeah, let's jump into it.
So there's a brand new article out of Fox 13. And I'm going to go to this. So former Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes slammed for lack of transparency, conflicts of interest in audit. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and read this. And if you guys have comments, please leave them in the chat. I'll try to put them on screen. And as always, we are completely donor funded here. And I cannot say that Ryan and I are doing well financially in and outside of just making this podcast and trying to make a living. So any super chats are always welcome, and donations are linked below to our donor box and our Venmo and our Patreon. So thank you for all of our supporters who help keep this funded. So in an audit of former Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes found he lacked transparency and created a perceived conflict of interest for his involvement with Operation Underground Railroad. The audit also found that Sean Reyes appeared to leverage his position to support the controversial nonprofit organization. So that was just released. It cited numerous instances where Sean Reyes withheld questionable information pertaining to his activities and travel itinerary while in office. So he tried to redact a lot of things, under saying things like it was because of an attorney-client privilege. Mm-hmm. And the auditors are like, do you think we were born yesterday? And if you're going to black these things out, it's probably because you have something to hide.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, there was one slide up there. I'm hoping to get I need to get a copy of the entire report. But there's one slide that they showed where they had a whole bunch of requests for information from his calendar and things on what he was doing and who he was meeting with. And it's just redacted, attorney-client privilege, redacted. He just, anything he didn't want out there in the public, anything that he didn't want anybody to see, he claimed attorney-client privilege. And that came up in the discussion with the committee members afterwards, and talking with the new attorney general, they're like, we need to know this information, and Sean Reyes is hiding all the information, all the important information behind attorney-client privilege. How do we get around that? And the new attorney general didn't have any answer. He's like, yeah, I understand your concerns. That's something we need to address. But the committee, the audit team found that in several instances, and we'll get into that a little bit more, Sean Reyes claimed attorney-client privilege for his redaction of information or for not providing the information, which they were able to find out was not attorney-client privilege. So he was using that excuse or that shield inappropriately and falsely. And so that's a problem. That's a problem, when you're trying to hide all this information, what you're doing, where you were, who you were with, at what times, and what you're spending your time with. And this is confirmed to me personally because my sister actually ran PR for Sean Reyes. And so I've known about how he operates, and that he was involved mostly with rubbing shoulders with celebrities. He wanted to rub shoulders with celebrities and make connections more than he wanted to prosecute the law in Utah and hold criminals accountable. He was in this for the same reason that Tim Ballard got into OUR, for fame, money, influence, and also to paint himself as a badass, modern, righteous crusader, hero type person, which led him down the path of writing a screenplay for a movie featuring him and Tim. Tim as a vigilante, anti-human trafficking guy, and working with attorney general to take down bad guys. He personally wrote a screenplay to try and make a movie about himself while he's attorney general.
While he was attorney general.
Attorney general, yeah. And so I've known about Sean Reyes and how he's operated from stories my sister has told me. And this is just confirms all of that stuff by a third-party independent review.
I'm always a supporter of the arts, and Sean Reyes, I love your pet project that you're doing, but maybe a different subject, maybe a different time. Maybe not something while you are trying to snuff out the corruption while actually writing a screenplay to endorse the corruption and write heroic stories about yourself. That's cool. Keep those to your journal. Fascinating. Wow.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that until you just told me. And
Oh, you didn't? Yeah,
I
that's one of the
I know a
it's
lot
just
of
a
dirt about Sean
bizarro.
Reyes that I'm not allowed to say yet. But that's so on brand, so on brand. And
You know what we ought to do is I think I can get a copy of that screenplay. I believe it was in the Davis County Attorney Report. Or I don't know. I think I know somebody that has a copy of that screenplay. That
I'll
would
act
just
it out.
be hilarious and sad to read. Maybe we could do a reading, a screenplay reading, get some actors involved. And
Oh, it's a one-woman show if I'm acting it out.
okay. All right. But that's tangent. We're getting off topic. Okay, let's get back to the article.
And then somebody said, who will snort this cocaine off of this hooker's ass cheek? And I thought, the Attorney General, Sean Reyes, me, the only person who has the nostrils capable of snuffing up all of the cocaine off of that hooker's ass cheek. It was probably a fiction. I just made that up. That's not true. I can't say, but like that might be a scene that was in there. Anyway. Okay. So we're just getting started though, guys. They do a really interesting graphic in here that shows exactly his funnel of money and corruption. So it goes on to say that Sean Reyes was a longtime supporter of Tim Ballard. Tim Ballard has been the subject of multiple lawsuits accusing him of misconduct, including sexual assault. He eventually permanently separated, quote unquote. I love the quote unquote. Ooh, sassy. Permanently separated from OUR.
Fired. He was fired. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah. And also, is he really permanently separated from OUR? Ballard has denied all allegations against him, called everyone dumb sluts and whores. Okay. Auditor said it was difficult to complete the audit and present clear findings because of Reyes' lack of transparency. Uh-oh. So, according to the audit, Reyes held back, quote unquote, information on meetings with the OUR Board of Governors, events that included Reyes and Ballard in what appeared to be speaking roles and fundraisers for OUR, meetings with Reyes and OUR staff to review OUR's operations, meetings with the Attorney General Alliance, AGA, the National Association of Attorney Generals, and Republican Attorney Generals Association, RAGA. So there's been a longstanding questions as to how much time Reyes spends in Utah doing work on behalf of the voters who elected him. According to the audit, 90% of Utah Attorney General office employees reported being visited by Reyes a little or not at all. A total of 62% disagreed or strongly disagreed that Reyes was involved in the operations in their division. So he's just one of those politician fat cats coming in, collecting a paycheck and a title, throwing his weight around, and the people who are actually underneath him are like, yeah, he's my boss, but I ain't never seen him. He's probably off doing some corrupt stuff.
Yeah, he was, from what I've been told by my sisters, he spent a lot of time at Real, Salt Lake games, box seats, taking celebrities and other famous people to sporting events and palling around with Tim, flying all around the world, posing for video clips to make himself look like a hero. And yeah, he was involved in a lot of non-attorney general type of stuff. And this just confirms it. That's what we've been hearing. That's what we've been saying. And this actually confirms it. Like, what was it? Just said 90% of his employees say that they had very low contact, if any, with him. Like, man, I wish I had a government position that could get paid good money for showing up 10% of the time. That would be nice.
I'm doing this one job right now, and I'm also doing a second one called taking care of 3 kids in my house. Sean Reyes, clock in. I am doing double the amount of work that I'm supposed to be doing. Do at least one of your jobs. I'm on the clock for 2. And also, huge thank you to the people leaving super chats. Dave E, $100.
Wow.
Said, keep up the good work exposing the corruption of those in power. Huge help on that. Thank you so much. And I think we got another super chat from, is it Chandra D? Super sticker? $10. Thank you, guys. You have no idea how much that means to us. All right.
Yeah, thanks.
And just my heart. It's actually my birthday on next Monday on the 10th. So I'm considering all donations birthday presents. Thank you so much. All right, back to the article. So for an example here, it shows provided calendar event. Sean Reyes is like, let's just close this out, redact. And what it really said was that Sean Reyes was not at the Utah Chief of Police conference like he's supposed to be. Description, Sean has declined attendance. And he's like, only my attorney and I can know that. Attorney-client privilege. Haven't you ever heard of it?
Yeah.
According to the auditors, Reyes inaccurately stated the reactions were due to attorney-client privilege. Lies. And this is, I wish I didn't have to show this picture on screen because it creeps me
It's so
out.
cringe. Oh my gosh.
This is like a toddler having a photo in school the first time they ever learned how to smile. Like he looks
you're
like
absolutely right.
trying to commit evil acts. Like, look at this. Are you guys understand this grin? And he's like, I am a badass.
I'm an army guy
with a gun.
Yeah, he's holding a Glock right there. Like in his hand. He's like, look at my gun.
I know.
I'm cool. All right.
This is, if there's like beauty shots that women would take in the 80s.
Glamour shots.
Glamour shots.
Yeah.
This is the beta male version of that, Sean. We can all see it. So it says, quote, the use of attorney-client privilege may be even less appropriate in its attempt to place restrictions on a legislative inquiry, such as an audit. The legislative branch has the power of oversight, auditors wrote. They better. Communications discovered during the audit shows instances when Reyes claimed he represented both the state of Utah and OUR. A house divided against itself cannot stand. That's what I learned. Both the state of Utah and OUR. As somebody who's supposed to snuff out corruption. Sure,
yeah,
Sean.
And I would argue that maybe, considering he only went to his job 10% of the time, he was representing OUR over the state. Like that apparently, could
100%.
be argued that that was his priority, is representing and doing the bidding, the fundraising, the PR, the potential whatever corrupt activities they may have been up to, that he was more concerned and spent his time doing that over the duties of Attorney General for the state of Utah. And what's so shocking and just so angering is that this is now being revealed after he's out of office. Like, what the hell, Utah? Where was this report? Where was this investigation while he was in office? Seriously.
Yeah, and I think this is just a thing about politicians and people who get into positions of power. It's about campaigning and being in that position of power, having the label and the title to then be able to throw your weight around. It has nothing to do with actually following through on the promises and the needs of your constituents in any meaningful form. It's about the power, the title, and then what you're going to do with that. And this is a very typical politician thing to do, don't you think? Just spending 90% of your time using your title to then enrich yourself and, play some football. So let's go back to this. The audit shared how Reyes' perceived conflict of interest with nonprofit organizations such as OUR, quote, could compromise the AGO's ability to fulfill its duties impartially in the event of misconduct or in compliance with these organizations. The appearance of a conflict is further magnified when the AG is not transparent regarding his involvement with some nonprofits. For example, auditors referenced a clip obtained by Fox 13 News showing Reyes speaking at an OUR fundraiser in Davis County. Quote, this is Sean Reyes saying this, I've sat on maybe over a dozen nonprofit boards. There's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of fraud. There's a lot of ego in the nonprofit world. I saw none of that. And I really looked hard at Operation Underground Railroad.
Yeah, so that was...
Is that a stand-up set you did? Is that sarcasm, Sean Reyes? Go ahead.
That he said that in Davis County, that's where the investigation, the Davis County attorney was investigating Tim Ballard and OUR for fraud. Sean Reyes comes in and says, hey, I've already looked at these guys. They're totally squeaky clean. You don't need to look into this. And the Davis County attorney submitted his report to Sean Reyes. And so conflict of interest, yeah, there's a big one, like a huge one. If the chief law enforcement officer for the state of Utah is overseeing the investigation into fraud into Tim Ballard and OUR while he's on the board of OUR, while he's doing fundraisers for OUR, and then publicly states in this fundraiser that there's nothing to look at here, nothing to look at here. I mean, you tell me, is that corruption?
Yeah.
Is that a conflict of interest?
I'm sure he's taking a huge fat paycheck as the AG, and it says the Utah Attorney General's office is tasked with oversight of nonprofits. I wish that whoever wrote this article had like 1,000 exclamation points right here to really, put a fine point on this of like, if not him, who is going to oversee these corrupt, abusive nonprofits who have unchecked power? If not you, who? Why is it podcasters, for the love? Okay.
And this is why, if it's not absolutely 100% clear, this is why Tim befriended Sean Reyes, because Sean Reyes oversaw nonprofits in the state of Utah. And if there was ever any sort of allegations into fraud, into sexual assault, into any sort of criminal activity hurled against Tim Ballard, OUR, Tim, if he has Sean Reyes in his pocket, boom, get out of jail free card. That's why this relationship started. That's why it continued. And that's why it's just so shocking that we're only getting the details of this
right now. Why aren't more people talking about this? Man. Exactly. Auditors believe Reyes leveraged his position to create his own nonprofit. So this is really interesting. Okay. Liberate all values all. Liberate all values all. Lava.
He had to work lava in somehow. He's from Hawaii. He's like, I need something for that A. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but there you go.
In order to vouch for other nonprofits. Quote, AG Reyes asserted the fact that one of the responsibilities of his position is to oversee nonprofits and know which ones have the highest impact, auditors wrote. As such, he encouraged donors to provide charitable funds to Lava. So he created his own nonprofit as the AG. This is hair on fire corruption. He created his own nonprofit for other donors to funnel money to him to tell them which ones were the best. As such, he encouraged donors to provide charitable funds to Lava and appears to indicate that he could determine what organizations were worthy of these donations. In short, it appears that Lava acted as an intermediary between, where did my thing go? Oh, it moved. As an intermediary between donors and other nonprofits. So this graphic's really interesting. So over here on the right, Attorney General Sean Reyes, he is the leader of the AG's office. He's the president of Lava, potential conflicts of interest. He's supposed to have oversight authority over Lava. The AGO plays an important role in the oversight of nonprofits, including Lava. He's overseeing his own nonprofit. And then over here, we have donors on the left funneling money down into Lava. Rather than give donations to nonprofits directly, Lava acts as an intermediary, and those go into the nonprofits organizations. I'm trying to think of an example. Chat, help me out, of like another politician doing this. I mean, there's a lot going on in Washington, D.C. right now. Let's think Doge. There's a lot of examples going on in the world right now where somebody who's supposed to oversee something will directly benefit by the money coming in and the ways that they oversee it. This is unfortunately American politics, which feels like we live more in a corporation than in a company. We live more in a corporation or a company than in a country sometimes. So any
a good example of that's going on right now is the Department of Government Efficiency that President Trump is putting Elon Musk at the head of that. And that is a department that oversees the efficacy and budgets of all the other departments. And so it's like the one ring that rules them all. And Elon Musk has stakes in companies that are regulated by these departments. Now he jumps ahead to the head honcho that's over those departments that are regulating his businesses. So that's a conflict of interest on the national level that warrants some discussion and needs some safeguards put in place on the same lines of what this is all about. But this is like not even trying to hide the fact it's not only regulating nonprofits, but he's making recommendations. And I don't know how this exactly worked, whether it was recommendations or whether it was binding in any way, but he could discredit other nonprofits and say this one doesn't have a good track record, or you shouldn't donate and support this nonprofit, but here's the ones that you have a green light to do. I don't know if it was binding or just simply recommendations. Either way, he created an organization to take the money in himself for his nonprofit and then would distribute those to his favorite organizations, the top one of which is OUR, Operation Underground Railroad. So like an investigation needs to happen to see how much money Sean Reyes funneled to OUR personally through his nonprofit, and how much money and what, donors were restricted or discouraged from going to other nonprofits. Now, I've talked to other nonprofits in the state of Utah that have said that when OUR started gaining momentum and speed, their donations to their charitable organizations and anti-human trafficking efforts plummeted. They're like, we can't compete with OUR. They are taking all of the donations. And at the time, it was perceived that they just have a more effective messaging campaign. That wasn't the case. They had regulations and pressure and possible intimidation, possible restrictions placed on them from getting access to donations because Sean Reyes was funneling all of it or a lot of it or part or whatever he could get access to OUR, to Operation Underground Railroad. And that's, I don't know how he got away with this. I don't know how he would set this up in broad daylight and nobody raised a fuss, nobody raised a red flag, and nobody shut this down before it got off the ground and before it did what it did. I really don't know how he got away with this for so long, because it's such a conflict of interest, and it's so far conflict of interest that it's corruption. It's just a recipe for corruption when you have that much power and you control that much money. And if he wasn't interested in any sort of corrupt behavior, why did he need to take the money into his organization? Why was that a requirement, or why was he going after the money? Why did he want to be the middleman for the money? That's a good question. And what was he getting for that? What kind of profits? What was he skimming off the top of those donations for his own personal benefit and organization? Those are questions that we need answers to. We've uncovered what he was up to, but what I'm so disappointed about this report is that it didn't go into the details on how he operated Lava, on how OUR personally benefited from his influence on other NGOs, nonprofits, and what kind of money was funneled in that endeavor. This just opens up so many questions that need answers, that hint to potential corruption to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. And I don't know. There's a lot here that needs to be answered. So another thing that this brings to mind is that I wonder, and I have a question, if Tim helped him set up Lava, or if this was a joint venture between Tim Ballard and OUR to funnel money to OUR. This is putting the blame on Sean Reyes, but as we see previously in that article, Sean Reyes leveraged his office to have an influence on and to help OUR. The vice versa question is just as important. What kind of leverage did Tim Ballard have in on Sean Reyes? Was the tail wagging the dog here? Was Tim really pulling the strings for Sean Reyes, or was Sean Reyes doing this to help Tim? What did that relationship look like, and how did it function? Knowing what I know about Tim, he does not take kindly to being second fiddle, to not being the alpha, to not being in charge. And so I would venture to guess, speculation on my part, that Tim was in charge of that relationship. He wore the pants in that relationship. And this lava organization of Sean Reyes was a puppet organization specifically crafted to help Tim Ballard achieve his financial goals, raise more money, get criminal immunity for any potential prosecution or allegations that might be hurled his way. And so, which was it? Was Sean? I mean, obviously, Sean Reyes was in charge of Lava, but was it Tim that had the leverage over Sean Reyes, or was Sean Reyes simply acting on his own? I don't think he was. I think Tim had the leverage over Sean Reyes. He worked in partnership with Sean Reyes for this fundraising effort, because then he tapped Sean Reyes to go to fundraisers and pitch OUR as a credible organization that has no wrongdoing. And he's like, I've looked into all of it. And so that credibility that Sean Reyes gave Tim Ballard dramatically helped fundraising. Even if you put the law of stuff aside, it dramatically helped his fundraising to have the chief law enforcement officer of the state of Utah backing him, backing his credibility. Now, this goes hand in hand. We have to remind everybody that this goes hand in hand with the endorsement and credibility and backing of M. Russell Ballard, Quorum of the 12, president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So we have the ecclesiastical Mormon royalty endorsement that Tim is a good guy, that he's a righteous crusader, that he's the best source on revisionist American history. And we have the chief law enforcement agent officer, who is also LDS, if I'm not mistaken, saying that Tim is credible, that he is a righteous crusader and worthy of donation money. So can you see how OUR was able to raise tens of millions of dollars with those two pieces of this puzzle, with those two endorsements? The ecclesiastical endorsement of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the president of the Quorum of the 12 supporting Tim, and the endorsement of the chief attorney general, the chief law enforcement officer for the state of Utah. Like, you can't get better endorsements for that. And so OUR, through Tim, with this setup, was able to raise $50 million, I think, in 2022, $50 million with this setup. And yeah, that's a lot of money being thrown around. How much of that money went to Sean Reyes personally through his own personal nonprofit? How did he benefit from this personally? That's one of the questions that need to be answered, so.
Hey guys, I'm back.
Spawned out for a second.
Yeah, how was that? I was literally, my computer just crashed, and
that's all right. I needed to rant about something anyways.
Oh, okay, good. So everything still fine for the viewers?
Yeah, good comment by Debbie. You don't have to bribe anyone when you can compromise them. That's a great comment. Yeah, true. Yeah, this whole report is showing how Sean Reyes was compromised on so many levels, willfully or willingly. I mean, it's just asked so many questions. And was he doing this solely for his own personal benefit, for his own self-aggrandizement, or was there a profit motive? Clearly, if he's funneling money through his own organization, there's a profit motive here. That's also a conflict of interest just by itself. But that aside, what other kind of personal motivations did he have? Did Tim have dirt on Sean Reyes? There's a lot of rumors floating around about, scandalous alleged videos with hookers and cocaine and things that are just rumors. Did Tim have dirt on Sean Reyes enough to keep him, in his pocket? Was Sean Reyes completely beholden to Tim Ballard and OUR? I don't know the answer to that, but those are some of the questions that this report really brings to the forefront of answers that we need.
Right. And I'm sure your whole rant was amazing, and I'm going to have to go back and watch it.
Okay.
Yeah, those are a lot of things that I think more and more things are going to be coming out, and this is just the tip of the iceberg too. So should I keep reading?
Yeah, keep going. There's more.
So
wait, there's more.
In 2023, Reyes teased that he would be endorsing a great conservative patriot and warrior for the United States Senate. According to text messages attached as evidence in a civil lawsuit, the patriot, quote unquote, was OUR founder Tim Ballard, of course. Reyes eventually stated that he would not be endorsing anyone. In December 2023, Reyes stated that he believed the women accusing Ballard of sexual misconduct. So he believed the women. This is when like all of Tim Ballard's bestest buds came out for the women, like Glenn Beck and Sean Reyes, and distanced themselves from him. In that same speech, Reyes announced he would not seek re-election, as if we want you back. We're breaking up with you, Sean Reyes. The audit confirmed reporting by Fox 13 News showed how the Utah Attorney General's office received $950,000 from OUR. What is people's donations? Widows might please take this money and save the children that you're showing us that you save on these videos you've captured. Yes, keep doing that important work to the tune of almost $1 million. What is that doing going directly to a Utah Attorney General's office? How is that legal? How is that allowed? What could they possibly be needing to bribe with that money?
Yeah,
is that
it doesn't
normal?
look good.
Do nonprofits usually give millions of dollars to attorney generals? Sorry, go on.
Yeah, we can't say there was a bribe, but that needs to be looked into. Like, that needs to be investigated. What was that money used for? What was it quid pro quo for something? Especially, I mean, OUR is being actively investigated for fraud and sexual misconduct and other things. At the time, Sean Reyes is the attorney general. At the time, Sean Reyes in his office is receiving almost $1 million from OUR. Now, I have a list of other law enforcement grants, according to OUR tax refund or tax documents that are public, that show the different grants that OUR has issued to law enforcement agencies from Washington State and Maryland and elsewhere. You read down that list of grants to combat human trafficking. It's $9,000 here, $16,000 there, $4,000 in equipment. They're all small amounts when they took in $50 million in 2023. But the Attorney General of Utah gets $900,000 of OUR money. Come on, people. Like, come on. Like, if you needed a smoking gun for corruption, that is about as bad as it gets. You know,
it'll get even better once we get the video of Sean Reyes snorting coke off of a hooker's butt cheeks. But until then, this is a great smoking gun. So continue reading. The Utah Attorney General's office collected the money and distributed it to law enforcement agencies across Utah. Additionally, the Utah Attorney General's office sent at least 13 thank you letters to OUR with detailed statistics outlining the numbers of police cases that were positively impacted by OUR's donation. In exchange, OUR was able to fundraise using the numbers supplied by the Utah AG's office, taking at least partial credit for cases solved by local law enforcement. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's got a lot of interest to it. And I guess the main thing I just, my brain goes to, I don't know about you, is how many times OUR takes full credit for things that the law enforcement just can't do. And that we're working in teams with law enforcement, but they would be dead without our special operations, because nobody cares about sex trafficking except for OUR. And this will never get solved under any circumstances unless you donate money to Tim Ballard. If you do not like the way that we are saving kids, then you don't like us saving kids and you want them to stay in the worst hell imaginable. Give us more money. So it always comes back down to the Tim Ballard OUR myth making, that they're doing all kinds of insane, heroic work, taking all of the credit, and people never really looking into where the money is going.
Yeah. And this is a pattern of behavior that I saw when I was part of OUR 2013, when it was just getting off the ground and stuff. Tim went into a character assassination mode on one of my friends who went on a radio show with his own organization that partnered with OUR, and made a comment like, yeah, we've rescued so many kids this year with these donations or something. And Tim freaked out. He's like, nobody gets to take the credit besides me for this. You can't take the credit. And he freaked out and went into character assassination mode on this person who's a good friend of mine. He is so hyper fixated with taking credit for everything that he can possibly, that he goes so far as if they've donated money to buy toilet paper for a police department that caught a bad guy, he's taking credit for that. And he's going to get angry if anybody else takes credit for it. You know, that's a hypothetical situation, but I know there's things like that. That's how OUR operates. And today, the current OUR, it's not Operation Underground Railroad anymore. It's OUR Rescue. They are not conducting couples ruse operations where they're actually actively having jump teams go in and save kids in third world countries. They figured out that that doesn't work, and that Tim was making up his tactics, and it's total BS in its effectiveness. They are now simply taking in donations, using footage of their actual jump team on the ground rescues with law enforcement, using that footage and fundraiser to raise money, taking that money, putting it in investment accounts, and then giving a portion of that to law enforcement agencies. And they aren't actually doing any on the ground rescues or intelligence gathering. They lost access to Janet Rustin, the psychic that Tim was getting his intelligence from when she left with Tim after he got fired and went to the Spear Fund. Anyways, they are simply taking money in as an organization that is on the ground when they're not, and then they're funneling that to law enforcement agencies that are doing actual real anti-human trafficking work. So what this is it's a middleman. It's a money laundering. I mean, that has criminal implications, which I'm not saying that there are any criminal implications in that, but it's deceptive. It is definitely deceptive if you watch their fundraising campaigns. So OER Rescue currently is taking money in and simply giving a small portion of that money to law enforcement agencies, and then taking credit for the rescues that those law enforcement agencies report, or the bad guys that they catch. And so it's just a middleman fundraising machine and money transferring machine, just like what Sean Reyes was doing, with tens of millions of dollars being raised around this message that Tim created, that I perceive to be a fraudulent and false message, in my opinion. With tens of millions of dollars being created with that messaging and that marketing campaign, it attracts vultures that also want to get in on this scheme. And so, including Tim's own family, which is why most of the board of OUR at the time was Tim's family. So they could personally profit. So Sean Reyes could personally profit, and any other people that were looking for some sort of money machine could get in on this and personally profit from it. And a lot of people did. A lot of people did, including, we need to go into this in a whole nother video, but including Elder Ballard's son-in-law, who ran Tim's new organization and was personally overseeing that while Elder Ballard was contacting wealthy members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, asking them to donate to OUR. That's happening. He not only provided tax or tithing information to Tim and OER so he could target fundraising to wealthy members of the church, but he asked personally individual wealthy members of the church to fund OUR. One of those that we can say conclusively is Russell Brunson, the ClickFunnels guy, multimillionaire. He says I have a video copy of this, that he claimed that Elder Ballard approached him personally and asked him to donate and fund OUR in the early days. And so that video was immediately taken down, but there's copies of it out there, and I have one of them. We're going to show that in another episode. So yeah, fundraising, hundreds of millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars a year, get in on this cash money machine. It's it's rolling.
Yeah.
They're rolling in
It
it.
pays dividends. Quite the investment, both, spiritually and financially. Yeah. Thank you for your contributions, Ryan. I'd be dead without you. You're so right on with all that stuff. And if you have questions about anything that we're mentioning and you're like, that seems like a rumor or something onto a tangent, there's so much to this story. The rabbit hole is so deep, and there's so much that's already come out with investigations, and a lot of this is already backed by plenty of evidence. So just to keep reading, among the items redacted or withheld from auditors included times when Reyes visited a private barbershop and whether he conducted official business at the location, as investigators discovered. Fun fact, I run a nonprofit, the Nuancehoe Foundation. I just worked for a different nonprofit called Open Stories Foundation, Mormon Stories. Those are both very well-run nonprofits. We can barely tell the difference between mine and theirs. But I do know a thing or two about running a nonprofit. And even though I would love for my nonprofit, for instance, to pay for me dyeing my hair blonde, because I am an on-camera personality now, and that's part of the nonprofit's goals, is to make videos. As much as I would have loved for John DeLynn or Mormon Stories to, pay for my spray tans or my Botox or something, things that help me make the nonprofit better. As much as I wish I could say I could do that, I can't, because those are my personal expenses, and I'm not going to take from the widow's mite out of those things and draw a morally dubious line, right? I know that. That's pretty common sense. Kara, pay for your own effing hair, right? Sean Reyes, were you doing actual business at this barber shop? Sounds like you want everyone else to pay for your expenses to live except for you. So that's a funny one. So during one 2023 barbershop meeting where the information was withheld, Reyes is alleged to have met with, quote, former military personnel working to partner on human trafficking issues with the Utah Attorney General's office, according to the audit. So on the left is communication date. In the middle, it's what the AG provided was the communication. And then on the right is the information discovered by auditors. So basically it's just withheld. Go ahead.
Bring that full screen so we can see it.
Oh, you're right. It's not full screen. I'm not smart. It's still a great nonprofit I run, I promise. Sometimes I just forget to put things on screen. So on the left, it was pretty much withheld from auditors from AG provided information, and then AG requested a ride from his residence to the private barber shop, 11 a.m. for Friday, states that he will conduct meetings. That's what they all say. Yeah, work lunches. I've been in corporate America before. I know how this works. AG considered if he should conduct what appears to be AGO-related meeting at the Capitol or private barber shop. Like, just don't do it. Just maybe don't. Just maybe you're the corruption guy who's stamping out corruption. Don't we learn in Mormonism the appearance of evil? When the legislative auditors general asked to review the travel policies and practices of Reyes and his offices, the auditor claimed the information provided by Reyes, quote, did not appear to be complete. Yeah, this impairs our ability to fully do it. They're just like, give us the information or you're going to look really bad. And then they're like, this is a fishing expedition, argued attorney Johnny Pennerson. And the state records committee disagreed. According to the requested calendars to be released, they're like, pay up or we're taking away your family, basically, something like that. The Utah Attorney General's office chose not to appeal the case in district court, instead placing the calendars behind a $7,202 paywall. What is that about, Ryan?
I don't know.
The Attorney General, how can you possibly say you can see it if you pay us? Bitch, we pay you. We are the constituents of your state. We are the taxpayers.
You work for us.
You work for us. We have to pay you to see what you've been doing for us. Are you kidding me right now?
Yeah, I don't know what that is or how that works. That's really bizarre. But what that graphic that you just read shows is those are just 3 examples of Sean Reyes saying, hey, you can't look at what I was doing on this day. And he just flat out refused to provide his calendar information for those dates. And then the auditors, through their own investigation, third-party information, were able to find out what he was doing, a little bit of what he was doing those days. He was having his barbershop meetings where he conducts this business that he doesn't want people to know about. And so they just provided 3 of what sounded like dozens, if not more, examples of Sean Reyes just flat out giving them the finger, saying, I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing that day. attorney-client privilege, something important, and you can't look into it. Can't look into it what I was doing on those days. And some of those days, in that third example there, was meeting with Tim Ballard and OUR. He was trying to hide what he was doing with that. He was even meeting with OUR people on that day. And I think I'm speculating why he wanted to do that is because if it's shown that he met with Tim Ballard on that day, then he can be subpoenaed, and Tim can be subpoenaed, and OUR CEOs can be subpoenaed and deposed, and they can find out what that meeting was about. They can seek after records. So he's trying to cover his tracks so hard. He's trying to cover tracks like so hard here. And this just opens up so many questions as to what he was doing, who he was meeting with, what was going on in the agendas of those meetings. And it just looks so bad when you're trying to cover your tracks. And I don't know how he gets away with just giving the finger to the audit committee saying, I'm not complying. But that's their conclusion, is that he was not complying with the investigation, with the audit task force. He just flat out said no. And I don't know how you can do that. I don't know how that's anywhere legal. Mm-hmm. But apparently he thinks he can get away with doing that.
I'm wondering how this is actually going to play out, and if he will really ever get his comeuppance, because as we know, the last two attorney generals, Ivory was referring to former Attorney General Mark, I'm not trying to say that, Shurtleff, and John Swallow, both were arrested, both were charged with crimes, neither were convicted. Yeah. You can charge them with all the crimes you want, but the convictions don't stick, and it seems like he does think he's going to get away with it.
Well, I'll tell you how he's getting away with it. So the oversight committee, the legislative representatives that were issued this report, they heard all the details that you're hearing now. They heard the details. The OUR was named specifically as somebody that had leverage over Sean Reyes, or that he used his office to leverage favors for OUR. And they are fully aware that he hid behind attorney-client privilege. And I was expecting in this committee meeting for there to be outrage and some really hard questions being asked of the new attorney general. Like, this is so wrong. This is conflict of interest at best and corruption at worst. What's going to change to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future? And the new attorney general's response and the task force recommendation was, well, let's make calendars public by change the rules so that calendars are public. However, there was zero discussion of Sean Reyes being held accountable, of Sean Reyes having any sort of consequence for this action, and zero discussion around what are we going to do now? You know, that he just gave the audit the finger, gave the Utah legislature the finger, gave the people the finger, and says, I'm not complying with this. And there's no discussion about how they can force him to comply with their demands. And so what it shows to me is that either there is a lack of willingness for the oversight committee and the Utah lawmakers to look into this, or that they don't want to find out whatever's behind these, they won't find the skeletons in this closet. There isn't an appetite to look into it, or that they are complicit in the corruption. They're protecting the person that appears to have been corrupted. Now, I cornered one of the committee members in the hall afterwards, and I asked him point blank. I'm like, so is this it? Is nothing going to happen to Sean Reyes? Are you holding him accountable in any way? Is there going to be an investigation? And somebody from the Attorney General's office, the current office, told me that there's, the audit task force can make recommendations to law enforcement that these allegations be investigated criminally. But as far as I'm aware, none of those recommendations have been made to law enforcement. So, and then I asked this committee member, if they talked about, well, things need to change. The new AG needs to be, rules need to be tightened so that this doesn't happen. And the AG was like, yeah, I'm going to make my calendar public. And I cornered this committee member. I asked him, like, if Sean Reyes isn't held accountable at all, do you realize that you are confirming that they can get away with this, and you're emboldening and enabling this kind of corruption to happen in the future?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that the plan, is to just not hold him accountable? And his answer is like, well, we can make a recommendation that an ethics review board or something look into this further. And it's just a bullshit answer to like obfuscate responsibility. And so I came out of that just really discouraged and angry that the oversight committee wasn't doing any oversight on this. They got the report, they got all the details from what happened, and their reaction is like, well, Sean Reyes didn't comply with our requests for information, so let's shrug our shoulders and say, well, I don't know what else we can do. Maybe we can make a recommendation to an ethics board that they look into it further. But there wasn't even a call for criminal investigation into this, because all this stuff looks very, very, very corrupt. And it opens up so many questions as to the relationship between Tim, OUR, millions of dollars, fundraising events, all this stuff. And none of the committee members seemed interested in finding the answers to those questions. So
wow,
that's it.
Good for
the
you,
last
though, Ryan.
two AGs were fully corrupt, were arrested. Sean Reyes comes to town, and this is why, because they can do whatever the hell they want, and they can give the finger to anybody that looks into it and not be held accountable for the shit that they did while under the AG's office. There isn't an accountability, and there doesn't seem to be an appetite by the Utah lawmakers to hold anybody accountable for corruption. And so I think this investigation shows that corruption is going to be even more emboldened and easier to get away with, because he's not being held accountable at all. And this should be an outrage to everybody that's in Utah. It is to me, at least.
Mm-hmm. Right. I do not have any joy in getting my taxes ready to go pay these people to do absolutely nothing for us except for be more corrupt. And so great comment here, though, from Talu Buckaroo. How do we encourage the new AG? Call him, email. Public pressure is the only way. If he does nothing about Reyes, ask why, hold his feet to the fire, then expose him.
Yeah, great comment. Yeah, we need to put pressure on the current attorney general to. Well, there's a conflict of interest here. Like, I don't think that he can personally conduct the investigation, because his office is under investigation, meaning all the other attorneys and people that work for Sean Reyes. Some of them are still employed at the attorney general's office. So I don't think he can personally conduct the investigation. What needs to happen is for a third party to come in. And I talked to, Derek Brown's, I can't remember his title, somebody in his office who made the recommendation that a U.S. attorney general step in and conduct an investigation. And I'm like, are there talks about that happening? And he didn't say that there were at this time, but I would hope that, given like everything that we know now, somebody outside in Utah needs to come in, the attorney general for the state, for the at the federal level, to actually hold accountable some of these officials and review this, because obviously we can't trust the Utah state legislature to do their job and be an oversight committee. If anything, they are an overlook committee. They don't oversight anything. They get this report and they overlook it. Oh, lots of corruption. It looks really bad. It's shady. All right, let's overlook that and get to our tea time, and everything will be good. It's an overlook committee, not an oversight committee, in my opinion.
More like the overlook committee. That's what I'm going to bully them when I see them at the state capitol sometime. Yeah, excellent thoughts. Thank you so much, Ryan. As you can tell, I have a 4-year-old coming in and out of the room right now. And my attention is not as focused as I'd like it to be. But thank you so much for reminding us that we can absolutely do things. And Ryan, I'd like to create a plan moving forward. I won't be able to spell it out right now, but the phone number to call, the people to email, how we can actually
Yeah.
raise our voices and tell people that we're not okay with this more than just the podcast. I know that there are people who do watch this podcast, who are all involved with the story, and sometimes enough is enough and they've reached out to us, but we know that they're watching. And if you have anyone else out there that's listening who wants to come forward and talk more, we're always open to it.
How about we do this? Let's put in the video description after the live stream closes, the email to the attorney, to the new attorney general, his office, phone calls. They, I think either by law or by practice or rules, have to log everything that comes into their office. And if there is a public clamor for accountability on this story, then that could, they'll listen to that. I think the new attorney general, has, he just took the job. This office is completely tainted with corruption by 3 previous attorney generals. And so I would hope, and I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, that he's serious and about rooting out corruption and restoring public trust in the attorney general's office, which has a long ways to go, and thoroughly investigating or being willing to comply and actually even set up and encourage, like the Utah or the U.S. Attorney General, to investigate that. That would go a long ways for restoring trust in this public office. So yeah, let's put in the video description ways that you can contact, and go ahead, tell them what you're feeling, what you think about this, what you'd like to see done. There's no character limit like on Twitter or anything. And calls, emails, send the message that this is not okay.
This is not okay. Isn't. And shifting gears for a second, I wanted to read Debbie's comment. Did you see the X account that exposes Tim's fraud? Also, fantastic pictures posted there. Apparently, Sean and Tim are in a special fraternal order. Yeah. So, Debbie, I did look that up. And do you know what this is all about? I won't speculate that it's any kind of that. I don't know, but we have that's the guy from Eduardo Verasti, who was one of the producers of Sound of Freedom. Am I correct? And then Sean Reyes, Attorney General, right here, and then Paul Hutchinson, which I could talk about endlessly. We did an episode a couple of weeks ago about the den of pedophiles and his ex-wife going to prison for 15 years for being such, and many other things. Another right-hand man in this whole OUR saga, Paul Hutchinson, and then our Tim Ballard over here in some kind of interesting outfits that I can't speculate exactly what that is, but if anyone else wants to add more information on it.
Well, there's there's another post by Masonic Lodge. I think it was in Washington, D.C., if I remember correctly, that had knighted Tim and Sean Reyes Knights Templar. Like for those of you who love going down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories behind Knights Templar and Masonic orders, that's one that you can look into.
Yeah, that's why I said I don't know anything right now, but
I don't know anything about that. It's weird. Let me just say that it's weird that Tim was knighted a Knights Templar by this organization, and Sean Reyes also. Like, what are they getting? What kind of influence do they get? What kind of access to who? Why would they do that? What's that fraternal order all about? There's so many questions here that
Where
need
are their
answers.
allegiances?
So many questions.
Yeah, we do know. This is not a rumor. This is, I feel like, pretty well established that Sean Reyes has had many affairs on his wife and been spotted while he's married out at Sundance with voluptuous women that are not his wife, if you know where I'm going with this. And it kind of reminded me of like the Senate confirmation hearings this week with, various people in the government wanting jobs. And then the question arises like, if you can't be loyal to your oath for your wife and you're that brazen, by having so many public affairs, how can we really be confident that you're going to uphold your oaths to the Constitution and to, your constituents and so forth in the state of Utah that you serve? I mean, that's one way that my brain could possibly go with this. Just wanted to point that out. That's neither here nor there, but it does tell me that there is a type of Mormonism that men like Tim Ballard and Sean Reyes put to the forefront to gain access to people, to build trust, but they don't actually practice anything that they purport to practice while people give them their money. So
Optics. It's about optics.
Yeah, it's about character overall, and can we really trust these people? No. And what do you think is the future of the Lava organization now that he doesn't have his attorney general status anymore? Is he still going to be, he just loves making recommendations on nonprofits, the good and the bad. Do you think he's still going to carry on with his Lava nonprofit there, Ryan?
I think he's done. I think his political career's done. From what I've been told by people I know, Sean Reyes is seeking two endeavors right now to continue his career. One is I think it's an investment firm, getting possession with an investment firm with one of Elon Musk's investment firms, somewhere along those lines. That's his second backup plan, but his primary plan right now is to get an appointment in the Trump administration, just like Tim's trying to get an appointment in the Trump administration. And you told me that you talked with Paul Hutchinson recently, who said that he saw Tim doing some fundraising at Mar-a-Lago recently. So he apparently still has good graces of Donald Trump. If he's able to do fundraising at Mar-a-Lago, and so he's trying hard to get a federal appointment. I'm sure he wanted the border czar position, but that's already been divvied out. So I don't know what's going to happen to Sean Reyes. But both of them are trying to seek federal appointments. That's what I've been told anyways.
Good intel. Yeah.
And there's like 10,000 different positions that are federally appointed. Now, President Trump doesn't personally issue all of those. I'm sure he does the key ones, but then it's delegated to lower level cabinet members to issue the other.
They're loyalists, though.
Loyalists. But you can see that he's rewarding loyalists above everything else, above credentials, above experience. He's rewarding loyalists. And Tim has been very loyal to Donald Trump and helped campaign for him during his presidential bid. So if he can look past all of the allegations against him, Ballard, then it's not out of the question that he'll get a federal appointment in the Trump administration. That would be tragic for him to gain any more influence or power, seeing how he was able to corrupt the government of Utah with that power and influence. Just think the carnage that he could inflict upon people in the nation and the crimes that he can try and get away with if he has a federal appointment and start rubbing shoulders with more powerful people on the federal level. That could be a disaster for everybody involved.
Yeah. It's just a really scummy appointment after another. And Sean Reyes and Tim Ballard, they would fit so right in. Oh man. Like, why do we talk about this kind of stuff? Because now if these people aren't held accountable, they're just going to keep gaining more and more power in higher offices that affect even more people with even more scummy practices. So, if there's any final comments from the chat or donations, and Ryan, anything else that you want to leave us with?
Let's bring up, there's one more slide to highlight. And was there anything else in that article that we didn't cover at the end?
I think that covers it. And the last portion of the article was just about what the Attorney General is now trying to say. But I think it's pretty clear that things need to change, and it's not going to change without pressure. And they're just saying things to make people feel okay, but some actual pressure needs to be applied. Some phone calls, at least, some emails, some rioting outside of the Overlook Committee building, wherever they meet, the barbershop. Need to go to that
And by
barbershop.
rioting, we mean peaceful protests.
Don't speak for me. Don't put words in my mouth.
I'm trying to protect you from yourself.
Yeah, let me pull up the thing. Go ahead and rant for just 2 seconds while I pull that up.
Okay, so yeah, it seems that the overall feeling at the end of this committee meeting was that they are trying to look forward and not backwards to correct the problems of the past. But we're very buddy with Derek Brown, the new AG, and just go into it with a handshake and a pat on the back, like, we know that you're a good guy. But they didn't have really any hard questions. Although the president of the committee, I will admit, did have issue one concern, where he said that if Sean Reyes can hide behind attorney-client privilege, then that gives no power to the audit for uncovering what happens. And how are you going to address that? Like, because the president of this committee obviously was frustrated that the answers to important questions went unanswered, because Sean Reyes gave him the finger and said, I'm not going to comply. I'm not going to participate in this audit. I'm not going to give you the information that you want. And the response, I mean, it's on the whole committee meeting is, you can find it. It was recorded. It's video. You can watch the whole thing online at utah.gov somewhere on their website. The response, paraphrasing the response from the new AG, was he just simply said, yeah, I understand your concern, and that's something that we should probably address and talk about. But he didn't have an answer. So again, if an AG can hide behind attorney-client privilege and redact any information that looks bad about him or that covers his tracks, then there is absolutely no way that corruption like this is not going to happen, because the door is left wide open for this kind of corruption to happen. It's just wide open. And so I don't see anything changing. I don't see anything, even with the report that identifies all of the corruption and the unethical, immoral, at best, conflict of interest that Sean Reyes brought to the Attorney General's office. I don't see anything changing because they're not actually implementing any sort of changes to protect against this. There's no checks and balances, unless they actually come forward and call for a criminal investigation. And so if you're going to contact the AGs and contact your representative in your own district, that goes a long ways too. Call for a criminal investigation. I mean, criminal investigation into all of these allegations and what was Sean Reyes up to in all of this. And that I think that could potentially go somewhere. I don't know. But other than that,
There's
I don't know what else we can
do.
do.
That I know off the record about Sean Reyes's corruption that I don't know will ever be brought to the forefront without a criminal investigation and just opening all the books and be able to really dig down deep without him just getting off scot-free. And I wish we could just make an example of him, like third time's a charm with the corrupt Utah attorney generals. This is the third one that got charged, but actually didn't get convicted or have any consequences. So let's make an example out of him.
Yeah. And this just just put this in perspective for whether you're Utah or somewhere else. Utah is one of the fraud capitals of the United States. I mean, it's like well documented with all the shady MLMs that operate here, all of the Ponzi schemes that have been exposed. And one of the reasons why this happens is because it's a very tight knit group of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that put their trust in the stake president or the bishop or the bishopric member who is, with them at church, and they put on this front of being a good, honest guy that's temple recommend worthy, that is dealing honestly. And then from that position, because they trust the priesthood that they hold, the temple recommend holder, the persona of these people, these predators then use that to get people to invest in their Ponzi schemes. and get taken advantage of. And Utah is one of the fraud capitals of the United States. It's well documented because of that cultural influence. And nobody wants to hold anybody else accountable for or look at it other members of their church with skepticism or of any kind. And part of the reason that is because we are trained and taught as members of the church to not speak ill of the Lord's anointed, to only see good in people. And there's some utility and some value and some Christian beliefs behind that. However, that is being used and leveraged against members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to entrap them into Ponzi schemes and fraudulent endeavors. And OUR is the biggest example of that. All the members of the church that supported this didn't do it from a place of informed knowledge of what their money was going to, what Tim was up to. They just trusted. You just automatic default trust. Tim has endorsement of Elder Ballard. He has endorsement of Sean Reyes. He's a trustworthy guy. Here's a lot of money. And for people that donated thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars, they made some serious sacrifices to donate to this guy. And their money, as we've talked about in previous podcasts, $1.5 million of that money went to prostitutes, but that kind of investigation, that kind of transparency was not present with OUR. It has not been present with Sean Reyes in the Attorney General's office. It's not present in the finances of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The transparency is shut down, and there isn't anybody being held accountable for any of this. And so fraud perpetuates. Fraud runs rampant. People, good, innocent, well-meaning people are being taken advantage left and right to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. And if you're not going to stand up and say something and do something and hold people accountable, it's just going to continue and get worse. And I'm on a rant today. Like, for
you
a
are
lot of
good.
reasons.
I am absolutely. I was before this. Ryan was like saying, "Hey, let's go live at 12:30," and I was like, "Sweetheart, it's 1 p.m. Are you sure you're okay with this? Because you had this accident with this eye, and
I had a concussion 3 days ago. I'm still having a concussion. Knocked some screws loose in my head, I guess, and."
And I'm like, this is no concussion. I'm like this. My son just threw my Alexa at me in the middle of this, and I'm 20% here with you. But yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Ryan, that Utah is the fraud capital of America. I have an episode I've been writing that I want to explain this. Lynn Packer's done some great reporting on that as well. But if you're the state that has, the highest rankings of fraud per capita, you'd hope that the Attorney General is, hot on that case, but it's just the opposite. And the irony of the century, I guess. Let me go to the last slide that you wanted to show the good people. All right, take us through this one, Ryan. Okay, so in conclusion, this is a slide from the report, I believe. There's perception of a conflict of interest due to the lack of transparency into the AG's involvement with nonprofit organizations. And the Utah Code states that gives the AG authority to dissolve a nonprofit entity in the event of fraud or abuse of authority. That's a judgment call. So you see what kind of power Sean Reyes wielded over nonprofits, that he could shut them down if he thought there was an abuse of authority. And so he was like the ultimate king over nonprofits. Like, you got to keep him happy. You got to do whatever he says, or he can shut you down. Also, the Nonpartisan National Association of Attorneys General states that attorneys general are the primary protectors and regulators of nonprofit corporations in their state. And unfortunately, that's how it's set up. And so there has to be accountability and oversight to regulate the king of nonprofits, those that hold this power. But this report found that the AG did not disclose his involvement with Operation Underground Railroad, where he appeared to leverage his position and authority to support and fundraise for the organizations. They acknowledge that Sean Reyes leveraged his office for OUR. The question that the committee did not ask, that nobody's asking, is what leverage did OUR and Tim Ballard have over Sean Reyes? That's what this all comes down to. That's the question that needs to be answered. And because Sean Reyes is giving the middle finger to this audit committee,
he doesn't have to answer that. The only way for that to be answered is for a criminal investigation to be opened into the relationship between Tim Ballard, OUR, and Sean Reyes. And so if anybody is listening to this that has any sort of influence and wants to make the world a better place, please answer that question. Look into that. What leverage did Tim Ballard have over Sean Reyes? And hopefully, as some of these court proceedings go on, is that more and more people are just deposed and have to testify under oath. And hopefully, as other criminal investigations move forward with the Tim Ballard saga, some of those answers will come forward. So that's what I'm hoping will come out of this, is we'll find answers to those questions and so many more that were opened with this report.
Tip of the iceberg, really. Yeah. Thank you for helping us get this reporting out there, Ryan. You are the absolute best. If you guys want to help support this podcast and keep getting it out there regularly, then the buttons below in the description are the place to go to donate. We have a Venmo and a donor box, and our Patreon, where we put up some extra stuff over there, and you can catch all these videos over on our Patreon, and that helps fund us monthly. Really grateful for any donations that we get. Thank you guys to everyone who's listened to this and supports us and wants to help get this message out there. If you can like the video and leave any comment for the algorithm. And that's pretty much it that I have to say to wrap up the show. Ryan, you're amazing. Commenters who join us for this live stream, you guys are amazing. Thanks for following this. And I will make sure to leave some links. I will go look it up, and I will make sure to pin a top comment of how to get in touch with the AG's office currently right now, for anyone who wants to start raising your voice and say that something needs to happen and Sean Reyes needs to be held accountable. So we can't keep having this, and surely hope he does not get any further appointments in the United States government.
Yeah, and raise the voice in your own county. There's the lawsuits against, or the allegations against Tim, and the criminal accusations that have been filed from the women who have accused him of sexual assault are in Utah County and Salt Lake County. And so those counties are involved in these investigations, and we need to hold every law enforcement agency, sheriffs of Utah County and Salt Lake County accountable. And so, beat that drum, knock on those doors, make
Richard
sure that
Jones, you are the best.
They know we're watching.
Ever. He just linked us to, you can contact the Utah Attorney General's office by calling 800-244-4636 or emailing uag@agutah.gov. You can also contact the office by mail. Hell yeah. Thank you, Richard, for that. All right. That makes my job even easier. Okay. Now you guys have no excuse. Take 5 minutes and send a phone call and repeat back what we've said in this podcast and say, what are you guys going to do about this? Please open a criminal investigation, because these ties are far too nefarious for nothing to be going on here. So, Richard, you're the best. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody, for participation, for listening to us, for providing an audience to get this information out there.
All right. Do you guys know where to follow us? I'm nuancehoe on Instagram and TikTok. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel already, it would be amazing if you could do so. And we have so much more to share with you next time on the... Actually, Ryan, I have something that I wanted to tell you.
Oh, yeah. Timmy did. What?
You'll have to find out next time on another episode of Timmy Did What? Sean Reyes and Timmy. Shawnee and Reyes. All right.
Podcast.
Bye, guys.